Hi, this is One Tree from TryScootBoots.com. I have a set of Scoot boot sizing shells here, and I'm going to use them to evaluate their fit on my little mare Savannah, and hopefully give you an idea of how to decide what size Scoot boot your horse needs. So when we go through these sizing shells, we'll be looking at 4 different things to evaluate how they fit her hoof. So the first thing I'm thinking about to evaluate fit is how hard it is to put the boot on her hoof. So when I put it on her hoof, I should have to apply a little bit of pressure, but not a lot. So it should be similar to how it is for you to put your boots on. So you'll want to put a little bit of pressure to get it on, but you're not wrestling it with it, and yet you're not also not just slipping it on like a slipper would be. So once I've got it on her foot, I'll set it on the ground, and then we'll look at a couple things about how the boot is fitting her then. The first thing we'll look at is this gap here in the middle. So you can see right now there's a very mild V, but for the most part it's kind of parallel here. That's about how you want it to look on their hoof when it fits well. If the boot can be pulled together like this and the gap is almost gone there where it's almost touching, that suggests that the boot is too big for the hoof. Or if the boot is kind of pulled open wide like this, and there's more of a pronounced V there, it suggests that the boot is too small for that hoof. So the next thing that we'll look at is we'll turn to the back and take a look at how it's sitting on her heel. Her heel bulb should be kind of filling up this space, and this should be wrapping around nice and snug on the back there, but not pulling super tight. So I'll put my finger in there and try to get an idea of how tight that is, and you'll get an idea of what that looks like when we get to that point as well. Then the last thing that I'll look at is how the volume of her hoof is actually filling this boot. So we'll look at just how it's wrapping around the wall of her hoof, and also kind of look into these little windows here to get an idea of how much her boot is filling up that space in the bottom. So this is a size 1 shell. This is the size that Savannah wears, so we'll start with this one, and then I'll show you some sizes that are too large and too small, and show you how to evaluate those different fits. So when I pick up her hoof, I'm going to make sure it's clean, and then slip the boot onto it. So you can see I applied a little bit of pressure to get it on, but I didn't have to wrestle with it, and it didn't just slide on like a slipper would. So that says that it's a pretty good fit for our first indicator. And I'm gonna set it down. So this boot is a good fit for her. However, it definitely could not be any smaller. This is absolutely the max that you would ever want this gap to be. The way that her hoof fills it, it spreads it a little more than I'd like to see, but once she rides in a boot this size, it kind of settles around her foot and settles in to be a better fit, as you'll see with the boot she actually uses. So this may not be a great demonstration of the gap that's here, because this is a little more than you'd like to see, but it does settle around her hoof once she rides in it and fit really nicely. Now we'll look at the heels back here. I'm able to put a finger in here, but it's still snug. And you can see that this is laying nicely along the cornet band. It has to lay right next to that, that's fine. But I am able to still put a finger in there. And that's what I'd like to see. I also like to see that her heel bulbs are centered nicely here and filling up this space. That's what helps keep the Scoot boot on and helps it do such a great job of staying on. So then the last thing I'll look at to evaluate fit is just the overall volume. So we can see here that this is covering most of her hoof wall. It's not diving down, but this isn't coming up into her hairline in the front. So that seems to be good. And then in these little side windows here, I can look in and see that there's a little bit of room in there. And that's good for her because she tends to grow out a little bit throughout her trim cycle. So as she gets closer to needing a trim, she'll fill up more of that space, but she does have room to grow throughout her entire trim cycle, which is really nice. So overall, this boot is a good fit for her. She's a size 1 horse here, so you have an idea of what a good fit looks like for her. So now I have a size 2. This is 1 size too big for her. So I'm just going to put it on so you can see what that looks like. You notice that it just kind of flops on. It's kind of a sucking motion, and it's also really loose here. That's suggesting that this boot is too big. So when we put it down, When I hold this here, this is an appropriate amount of space. However, when we consider all of the other fit factors, this is just one to consider, and the other one suggests that it's too big, and this boot definitely is too big. It will stay on her, but it twists when I ride on rough terrain. So this is an appropriate amount of space, but other factors suggest that the boot is too big. One of those other factors is looking back here at her heel bulbs. So I don't know if you can see here, but it's not even touching her. I can fit 3 or 4 fingers in there. That's way too loose. Definitely not giving a snug enough fit back there to keep it from spinning. And then if we look in the windows right here, consider how the volume of her foot is filling it, there's a lot of gap in there. I can stick my whole finger in this area, and that's too much space. She's not gonna grow that much throughout her trim cycle. This boot really is just one size too big. This would be a size 3, and you can see this is just way too sloppy choppy. We'll put her foot down. You can look in the front. I've got gobs of room in here. Definitely way too much room. Can see that this is way floppy. In the back, I can fit like my whole hand back here. Way too much room back there. And then of course I can just look down and see like a 1/2 inch to 1 inch of extra space in there. Definitely way too big. So now I have a size too small for Savannah. This is a 0. And so I'm gonna try to put it on so you can get an idea of what that looks like. You can see that I'm having to work to get it on a little bit. Set it down. And now when we look in the front, we can see that she's pushing this really far open. You can also see how it's kind of dipping down in the front here. It's not staying sort of parallel to her hairline. So she's pushing this out way too much, and her toe is kind of right at the edge there. She just has too much hoof for that boot. Then when we look at the back, so I can get a finger here, but I can't hardly get anything in here. This is really tight here. And that's too tight back there. You can see everything's just kind of pressing hard against the boot. And when we look in this window here, she's got this boot pressed wide open, so there's no room in there really for her to grow throughout her trim cycle. And when I take this boot off, you'll see that I'm going to have to kind of fight with it to get it off. That's a little bit too hard, to get off. It shouldn't be quite that hard. So that's one size too big for her, too small for her. So now that you've seen sizing with the sizing shells, what too big and too small looks like, I'm gonna go ahead and put her actual boots on so you can see what a good fit looks like suited up. So I'm fastening the pastern strap, leaving 2 fingers room in there. And then I'm just gonna buckle her toe straps. And you can see that with the toe straps done, and these are her boots that she's worn quite a bit, they've settled in to make a nice amount of space there in that gap, so that's really good. And then in the back, of course, it's snug, but I can still get a finger, and she has a good amount of space in there for her hoof. So this is what a good fitting boot looks like, and we've checked our evaluations for this fit. One other thing that I'll say, when you actually have a real boot that you're putting on to test fit, you can also do the wriggle test. So you can just move it back and forth a little bit. A little bit of turning is fine, but her heel bulbs are fitting this nicely and not allowing the whole boot to spin all the way around. So that suggests it's a really good fit for her. So thank you for watching our video. If you have any questions at all, please feel free to contact us at tryscootboots@gmail.com. We really want everyone to have boots that work well for their horse, so we're happy to talk with you about your horse's unique needs. Please also check out our website, tryscootboots.com. There we offer demos, sizing kits, as well as fast and free shipping on all of our inventory. So please be in touch if you have any questions. Happy scooting!